Hello and welcome to Big Deal. Today we are focusing on the biggest corporate power struggle that India has ever seen. The fight between Tata and Cyrus MISTRY. From a boardroom battle, the fight now shifts to the extraordinary general meetings of the listed companies which will decide on the proposal of the removal of Cyrus MISTRY from the boards of these operating companies. We have a panel of experts today, well represented by those backing both the sides of the warring camps. My aim is to get the arguments on both the sides and let you, the minority shareholders, decide on your vote. Let's begin by introducing our guests today. Amit Tandon of IIAS, a proxy advisory firm which backs MISTRY's removal in the EGMs. Sriram Subramanian of InGovern recommending the voting in favor of Cyrus MISTRY. So two contrarian views there. Both have opposite views and they will present their argument for you to decide. We also have Mr. M.R. Venkatesh, the corporate affairs expert, vehement in his views, backing the Tata camp, it seems, and Arun Sangwan, the professor at FIIB, and now well known for some of his scathing comments on M&A strategy of the Tata Group under Ratan Tata's leadership. Now remember, this aspect has been also the point of debate between the two sides of the warring camps. Gentlemen, so good to have you on Big Deal. Let's first begin with the proxy firm InGovern. Mr. Subramanian, your report says that vote against the removal of Cyrus MISTRY because, and I quote, what's beneficial for Tata Sons may not necessarily be in the best interest of the public shareholders. Why do you say this? Also considering that in TCS, Tatas as the promoters have a majority stake, it is a futile exercise to give any recommendation, is my view. Is this recommendation for all the EGMs?
Nisha, it's early to sort of, we are analyzing all the EGMs notices. So we haven't yet come out with a report for each of them. So only for TCS, because TCS is the first on December 13th. So we can say that yes, we are recommending that investors vote against the removal of Mr. Cyrus MISTRY because largely the investors have to take a view independent of the actions of the dominant shareholder. Though already Mr. Cyrus MISTRY has been replaced as chairman, okay, and because Tata Sons owns 73% of TCS, it's a fait accompli in that sense. Even his removal as director is already a done thing. Investors need to vote against to express their point of view. At the end of the day, they have to take a view independent of the views of the dominant shareholder. And if the dominant shareholder in this case has not given a reason which is justifiable, which can for the removal of Cyrus MISTRY. And that is the reason why institutional investors and retail investors need to vote against.
All right, so that's the view coming in from InGovern. Now let's take it to IIAS. Mr. Tandon, what's IIAS's main reason for recommending a removal of Cyrus MISTRY?
Look, our recommendation was based on the position which Cyrus MISTRY was appointing. He was there as, he was not there as an independent director, he was there as a non-independent director, he was there representing, in a sense, Tata Sons in the various operating companies. Given the fact that he was removed from the chairmanship of Tata Sons, we felt his continuing on the board of the various operating companies became untenable. The situation which we've seen developed here is that there is hostility between some of the players involved, which we believe can be dysfunctional for the boards and as a consequence dysfunctional for the companies. And that is what is driving our recommendations, not so much as primarily what we believe is in the long term, short term, medium term and possibly the long term interest of the company, ensuring that they're continuing to operate inefficiently rather than getting distracted by boardroom battles, etc., which on a practical basis does impact the operating companies.
the friction can really cause a lot of issues. Now let's look at the mechanics of how the EGM vote will go on. Now, barring TCS, in which Tata Group already has a majority stake, all other listed companies have over 30% stake by promoters Tata Group, and LIC has a substantial stake as the single largest minority shareholder on each one of them. Now, Mr. Venkatesh, would you agree LIC has a very tough job to do?
Now see, if I have to, if it is one job that I wouldn't want at this point in time, it's going to be the chairman of LIC. So it's a very tough decision to him. On one hand, he is wedded to protecting the value of public money, the insurance policy claim holders who are putting large amount of money into the LIC. On the other hand, he has also taken a pragmatic decision. He has to be forward looking. He has to look at across what brings value to him. Now, obviously, he's faced with a Hobson's choice, and this would be something that he would never have dreamt, that his casting vote would swing the whole game one way or the other. Now, if LIC is going to be with the Tatas, obviously the Tata is going to be home and dry. If they are going to be with Cyrus Mistry will be home and dry, probably in several companies. Now, again, what holds true for the small investors or the minority shareholders would be equally applicable to them, and LIC has to take a call whether they want these enterprises to be Tata Enterprises or Shapoorji Pallonji Enterprises. Now, this is a huge call. This is not something that you are going to take it in a jiffy. It's going to be questioned whichever way. Again, I'm placing a bet that these people will swing more with the Tatas than with Cyrus Mistry for only one reason: Tatas are sentimental favorites.
All right, you put it on the sentiment. But Mr. Venkatesh, coming back to the question I was asking the proxy advisory firms, and they both have two different views. What is your view? Is by law Cyrus Mistry supposed to resign from each of the operating companies because he's ousted as the chairman of Tata Sons?
See, it is only a moral issue. There are two issues to it. There is a moral issue, there is a legal issue. On the moral issue, I am sure he doesn't have, once the ultimate owner or the beneficial owner of the largest shareholder has expressed no confidence in you, I am sure it is not appropriate to continue as a chairman or director in other group companies. Having said that, every group company is an individual company and entitles you to be elected to the board based on the shareholding and the votes that you get in an AGM or an EGM. So, if it is a moral issue, I may say yes. If it is a legal issue, I will say no. So, it depends on whether I have to wear the moral hat or the legal hat.
Professor Sangwan, you have done some serious study into the strategy of Tata Group. Now, of course, poor performance was one of the big reasons that Tata Group has suggested is the main cause for ousting Cyrus Mistry. Have you done any study or analysis on the performance of Tata Group in the last 4 years?
From 1995 to 2003, Tata Group acquired one company average 1 year. Suddenly in 2004 to 2010, they started acquiring a lot of companies, and it was like 5 years they acquired 51 companies, and then next 2 years, if I add to it, till about 2010, they acquired 10 companies more. You know what has happened? I was just looking at why would this kind of an irrational exuberance happen in a group? What were the strategic planners thinking? Were they equipped to making such large M&As? And mind it, all of these M&As were really large companies, most of them, and global. My concern here is a group which actually did not have much of an experience of M&A, suddenly pushing the pedal onto acquiring so many companies, didn't even know where it was pushing itself. That is one. Second, the valuations of all of these M&As, which now start reflecting in terms of bad assets, NPAs, write-offs, that is because they were bought at insanely high valuations. And number 3, the timing was totally wrong.
All right. So there are 3, claims that you've made, or allegations, I would say, Professor Sangwan. But to some of these questions, Tata Group has already issued statements because they were raised. They were in the midst of the heated debate between the 2 warring camps, especially in the case of Chorus and the valuations, where the erstwhile leadership and management of Tata Steel has also given their side of the view, stating that at that point this was in the best interest of the company, and that their valuations that they quoted in the bid was only slightly higher than the next best bid. All right, so we'll keep those points in mind. We'll slip into a short breather. There are lots more to discuss in this particular debate while you're deciding which side to vote for in the upcoming Tata's EGM's Articles of Association is what we'll discuss next. Stay tuned to Big Deal. Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal, and let's take it straight to the Articles of Association. In-Govern report has highlighted the powers of the Articles of Associations which were used to remove Cyrus Mistry as a chairman of Tata Consultancy Services, and they claim that was bypassing the TCS board. Now, Mr. Subramanian, you have suggested that the board be given more rights. Do you think that the Articles of Association gives the Tata Group and the promoters overarching powers?
See, obviously, in this case, for historical reasons, Tata Sons had retained that power of nominating the chairman of the board with itself in the Articles of Association. That is unfair, because the power should rest with all the shareholders in proportion to their collective shareholding. So yes, I mean, it existed in this Articles of Association, and they have already exercised their powers. So in future, can it be different? Maybe there is a different way to look at it, and give the power to the board of the operating company, like it happens in any other company, to elect the chairman of the board.
Right. So, M.R. Venkatesh, you are a corporate affairs expert, and of course, do you agree to the points of the Articles of Association and its power given to the promoters and the suggestions that have been made by In-Govern? And do you think that there was interference from the promoters, or did you think that Mistry had a free hand as a chairman of the group?
The core of it is that Mr. Mistry in his letter says, I was myself reduced to a lame duck chairman. Now, once he says he's a lame duck chairman and says so in explicit terms, he also goes about and says, I did professionalize and institutionalize the management in the Tata Group. Now, how could a lame duck chairman do institutionalize and professionalize the management of a particular set of enterprises that is working under him? This is on the substantive side, or on the subjective side. On the numbers side, he says that, look at it, I have increased the net worth of the group from 30,000 crores to 45,000 crores. All that, remember, has happened when he was the lame duck chairman. When a lame duck chairman says, I have increased the net worth from 30,000 to 45,000 crores and divorce of all the write-offs. In the next paragraph, he says that there is a potential write-offs or impairments aggregating to 118,000 crores. There seems to be a huge amount of confusion in the communication that are available in the public domain. Let me shift to the other side also. Look at what the Tatas are given a whole page advertisement in several leading dailies. Read it 3 times, you are confused 4 times over. You are not very clear what they are trying to say. Now, add up all these things that I can only surmise that people have not yet spoken the truth. And the truth is something far, far deeper, far, far hidden, and we are all speculating based on whatever we are getting as driblets of information. We are not getting the truth.
Mr. Subramanian, what is your reading on the ouster of Cyrus Mistry as a chairman, and and how do you read into the corporate governance issues that have been raised by Cyrus Mistry's camp?
These performance measures or metrics used were already known to shareholders. None of the incidences or none of the metrics used were not known to shareholders. And so what is the reason why such an action was merited so abruptly without any warning, when the nominations and remunerations committees of each of the companies have backed Mr. Cyrus Mistri's performance? One, two is and the independent directors of some of these companies have backed Mr. Cyrus Mistry on his and repose their confidence in them.
Letters that have been written from both the sides. One, of course, was Cyrus Mistry claiming and defending his performance, also highlighting the legacy hotspots and the various flawed international strategies of the group. And on the other hand, the way Tata Group had in a letter said that they will not go into public spat, but they do really maintain that poor performance was the big reason why Cyrus Mistry was ousted. What do you make of the entire conversation, the dialogue which has happened in the public space?
Okay, this is something very interesting, because all the guests have also mentioned this full page statement which has come out from Tata Sons. I was just looking at it and I was just kind of analyzing this. I came across something very interesting. I can read it out to you. It will just take about 30 seconds. Now, a particular paragraph says, insiders in Bombay House who have been with the group for many years silently and helplessly watching the conscious departure from old and proven structures. Okay? If I just notice the language used here, insiders who've been with the group for many years watched silently and helplessly. Now please remember, Mr. Mistry has been in control for only about 4 years, and during these 4 years some of the insiders have watched helplessly. That means he wasn't really assured of full cooperation. There was something that was holding them back. That is my point here.
All right, we'll take that point, Professor Sangwan, and we'll come back to you for more, but it's time for a short break on the show. But we will come back on the other side and look for remedies for averting such future conflicts and what can be the way forward in this conflict as well. Stay tuned to Big Deal. Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal, and let's take it straight to our panel of experts. Mr. Tandon, so what's the view from IAS? Is the crux of the problem in this spat the lack of defined roles and powers of the three entities, Tata Trust, Tata Sons, and the operating companies? What's the recommendation for avoiding this kind of a conflict in future?
Interesting. It's one of the issues we've raised in our report on the group structure. We've said you've got outside shareholders in the operating companies, so therefore it makes sense for them to have some nominees from Tata Sons or the Tata board, but to balance these two interests, it might make sense for them to have an independent chairman, and that's the recommendation we have for all the operating companies within the group.
Professor Sangwan, what do you have to recommend, since you have studied their strategy so well? What is it that they can avert in future?
See, time and again, what I can analyze from the given situation is the group is somewhere reluctant to encourage diversity of thoughts. I think these guys really need some chief dissenting.
So Professor Sangwan, to that answer, that question of yours, Tata had taken a lot of pride in saying that we had broad-based the Tata Sons board and brought in professionals like Amit Chandra, Venu Srinivasan, as well as Ajay Piramal. But yes, all eyes would be on the new chairman as well going forward, whether it's an outside professional who really comes in and takes forward the mantle of the Tata Group. But coming to you, Mr. Venkatesh, for the final quick take on whether reconciliation is on the cards. CNBC TV 18 learns that those talks may have already started.
If it happens, it's good for everybody. But my guess is it won't happen now. There is a remote chance that it could happen 6 to 10 months down the line. but not today.
It's a very, very complex issue. All eyes are on how the battle between Tata and Cyrus Mistry is really going to pan out in coming days, and especially when the fight has shifted to the extraordinary general meetings. Gentlemen, thanks so much for getting us your views, and I hope there was some semblance of understanding into the whole matter. When it comes to the minority shareholders, we got both sides of the views presented to you, and the call is yours, and you'll be taking that call while voting in the EGMs as well. LIC will play a very, very crucial role. With that, I end this episode of Big Deal. Thanks so much for tuning in.